I'm really excited to have my next guest on the podcast. He's the CEO at the greatest outdoor show on earth, the Calgary Stampede. Welcome to this podcast, Joel Cowley.
Thank you, Joe. Pleasure to be with you.
Likewise. Let's just jump right into it. How about you let the listeners know who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I am the Chief Executive Officer at the Calgary Stampede. And as you mentioned, it is the greatest outdoor show on earth. But as we will get into later in the podcast, there's a lot more that we do than just put on that great 10-day festival. I am an American. I have to be right up front with that. And I've been in Calgary for 13 months now and on the job, and brought my wife of 30 years up with me, Tammy. And we're just thrilled to be here. We both grew up in northern Colorado, so Calgary's always felt a little like home for us as we've come here over the last 30 years. And prior to this, I was at the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, so very much a sister organization to the Calgary Stampede. Developed a great appreciation for the Stampede and a lot of friendships. And so when this position came open, I figured I have to go for that. And we're just thrilled to be here.
That's wonderful. What's maybe something that people don't know about that the Calgary Stampede does?
Well, everyone knows the 10-day festival. It's impossible to come to Calgary during those 10 days and not know the Calgary Stampede is going on. And, I mentioned my experience at Houston for 15 years. That's a metro area of over 6 million people. And the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo is every bit as big as the Calgary Stampede. In fact, it runs 20 days instead of 10 and draws about twice as many people. But it was possible to come to Houston during that event and not know it was going on in that huge metro area. You can't do that in Calgary. This 1.2 million-ish people, I think, is just a perfect market size for the Calgary Stampede. It's big enough to support all the activities and the investment we make in putting forth a fantastic presentation for folks, but small enough where it still has that community feel. So everyone knows about that, but most people that I've talked to, they're not aware the Calgary Stampede is a not-for-profit. We are a not-for-profit organization here in Canada. And one of the things that means, unlike the United States, is that we can't carry a large financial reserve year to year. And so when this pandemic hit, it was hard. There was no rainy day fund to draw on. And through a lot of layoffs of staff and some real belt tightening and really taking on debt over 2 years, the organization survived that to the point where we could put on a full successful 2022 Stampede. It's going to be many years for us to recover, but we feel like we turned the corner with the 2022 Stampede. Another thing people probably don't realize is that we manage Stampede Park year round. So the BMO Convention Center and the expansion that's being developed, we manage that. We're responsible for selling that facility and bringing people to Calgary and generating the economic impact that out-of-town conventions bring, as well as the other facilities. We've had a number of equestrian events in the Nutrien Western Event Center here in the last few weeks, and we operate a youth campus to the northeast of Stampede Park that houses the Transalta Center for the Performing Arts, which is the home of the Stampede Band and the Young Canadians, the Calgary Arts Academy, which is a full curriculum school that focuses on the arts. And we host a lot of young people here throughout the year through Stampede School. So we'll have, say, 3rd and 4th graders come here all 5 days of the week to learn about history of Calgary and Western heritage and sustainability and agriculture at Stampede School. And we'll actually take them to one of our 2 ranches, the OH Ranch, that was donated to the Calgary Stampede 10 years ago. And they'll go down there and see firsthand what early ranch life was like, and they'll learn about ecology and sustainability and things of that nature. So this is really a diverse organization. A lot of people are aware of that 10-day event, but certainly not aware. I don't think most people are aware of the impact that we have within the community, both in terms of drawing people to Stampede Park, but also from an educational standpoint of youth throughout the year.
Absolutely. That's actually one thing I didn't really know before, that the Calgary Stampede was a not-for-profit. And I guess that explains the theme, "We're greatest together," that Calgary Stampede
Absolutely.
has. So
Yeah,
that's
and the vision is to create a world-class gathering space for the community, and i.e. Stampede Park. And we're so excited for the BMO expansion that takes the BMO Convention Center from 500,000 square feet to over 1 million square feet of this spectacular space. I imagine people have seen the construction going up. It's kind of hard to miss it, but it will be finished in June of 24. And what it does for Calgary is it really transitions the BMO Center from being a trade show facility. In other words, trade shows come to Calgary and the local population comes and enjoys the trade show, whether that's a home and garden show, an RV show, a boat show. What this expansion does is it turns it into a convention destination. So it brings people from outside of Calgary, both from within Canada and outside of the borders. That's what generates that economic impact, because those visitors, they stay in hotels, they eat at restaurants, they shop, they purchase things, and so we're excited about that because it will increase the economic impact on the city of Calgary.
hmm. One thing you did mention that I want to kind of go back on was the pandemic times. Obviously, it was a challenging time for everybody. But how do you build that resilience in times of challenge?
So I arrived in September of 21. So the pandemic was going on, but I was not here in March of 2020 when the pandemic started. But speaking with the staff who were here, it was really tough. That we basically laid off about 40% of our full-time workforce and an even higher percentage of our casual workforce, and still haven't built back to that level at this point. But I would say that resilience, it has to do with the people that were here. We have staff here who are incredibly committed to the organization. One of the other things that people don't always realize about the Calgary Stampede is it's volunteer-based organization, 2,500 volunteers that work on 28 committees and give freely their time and their talents. And so that resiliency was really tied to the people and their commitment to the organization during that tough time. And just operating with the belief that brighter days are ahead. And it took over 2 years, but we saw those brighter days with the 2022 Stampede.
Absolutely. Speaking of brighter days, the first Stampede, I believe, was called The Last West.
Yeah.
What do you envision for the future of the Calgary Stampede?
Yeah, it's funny that first Stampede in 1912. The Last Great West is what it was called, but it wasn't really envisioned by the organizer and the supporter as being an ongoing event. It was for local ranchers and businessmen who were kind of convinced that the Western lifestyle, Western way of life was disappearing. So we need to have one last hurrah before it disappears. And they had that 1912 Stampede. Here we are 110 years later, and we're keeping that Western heritage alive. And the other part of our mission, our original mission, was agriculture, and we're keeping that alive. It's taken on a different form over the years with regard to how rodeo and chuck wagon races are presented. We've made changes that are in the best interest of safety and the welfare of the animals, but we still feel we're keeping it alive. And with regard to agriculture, we still have horse shows and we still have livestock shows, but we've taken a greater role in educating the public on agriculture through some really fun, interactive activities, both on campus during the Calgary Stampede and with an event we have called Aggie Days that's put on in the spring for school kids and the general public to come and enjoy. And so I bring that up because there's already been a lot of change over those 110 years. Probably the biggest challenge that those of us in the fair and festival industry have is staying relevant. When most of these fairs and festivals started a century ago, they were kind of the only thing in town. It's like, you got to go, you have to go. And now there's certainly a lot more for consumers to choose from, including the metaverse. I mean, that certainly wasn't around in 1912. There are a lot of things competing for people's attention. There are a lot of things competing for people's entertainment spending. And so we have to just continually look at ourselves and say, what can we do to both retain the friends, the customers we have, but make new friends and bring different people out here to the park, and drive them here. And while they're here, hopefully they learn about Western heritage and they learn about agriculture. But we've given them a reason to come here and enjoy the Calgary Stampede. So, looking toward the future, we will continue to look for ways to stay relevant, to utilize technology, to bring in more diverse activity that draws a broader audience to us over that time frame.
Absolutely. That's one thing I could really confirm is that the value proposition of the Calgary Stampede, I just see so many diverse people going to the Calgary Stampede, and it's just really wonderful to see. So it's wonderful to hear that that's in the plans for the future, to keep expanding, keep getting a more broad audience to the grounds.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's critical for the success of an organization like ours. I mean, we know that we're in a very diverse city here, and our goal is to pitch a tent that's big enough for everyone to come and enjoy and feel comfortable. But in that tent, we want to have something that truly interests them. But at the very center of that tent will be the Western heritage and the agriculture.
I love that. Speaking of success, I mean, I've had a bunch of successful people, you included, on the podcast, and I always love to ask, from their perspective, what does success look like to them?
To me, it's pretty simple. Success, I think, is really measured by the extent to which you help others and make their lives better. And immediately you might thinking about charitable activities, and certainly so, and philanthropic activities. But that also expands to commercial activity. If you have a product or a service that makes people's lives better, and they benefit from it, that's success. From our not-for-profit standpoint, we look for opportunities to really be out in the community and enhance people's lives, whether it's putting on events over the 10-day period or throughout the year. But it's really the extent to which you make people's lives better. If you do that, you're successful, in my opinion.
I love that. And yeah, I totally believe that. I think that's one of my indicators of success as well, just being able to have that positive impact of those around you. So we're very much aligned there. What's maybe one common myth about your work that you wish you would debunk?
Well, one of them that people are working in this industry. You work at the Calgary Stampede. What do you do the other 355 days a year? I mean, and when I worked at Houston with that 20-day show, it was the same question. Well, what do you do? So I'm here on a work permit now, and I've traveled back to the States several times, and I come back through, and every time I go through customs, of course, they look at my work permit and they say, "You work for the Calgary Stampede?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And they say, "Well, it's October. Why are you here?" And so then I have a shortened version of it. Well, we operate Stampede Park year round, so it's a year-long job for a number of us. But we get that a lot. I know every employee here has received that comment when they say they work for the Calgary Stampede. we're here all year long, managing this property, maintaining this property, offering this property up to outside events, putting on our own events, and again, operating our youth campus. So there are very few slow times for us. It's not just the 10 days and we take the rest of the year
off. Well, that's a good clarification for anybody that's listening. They're always working. They're always working. Yeah. What's maybe one thing that you've read or listened to that's really inspired you?
I will tell you, it's something, a couple of events that I attended, something I witnessed. Earlier this year, I went to the 7 over 70 gala, where they recognized 7 Calgarians over the age of 70 for their impact that they've had on the community. That was truly inspiring to hear people who, had clearly reached retirement age, but they're not slowing down. They may not be directly involved in their core business anymore, but they are undertaking community service and philanthropic action that is truly still impacting this community in a positive way. That was really cool. And then just last week, I went to the Southern Alberta Business Hall of Fame. And, had I not been there, I wouldn't have heard the stories of the four inductees and just the impact that they had, the struggles that they had. And I'm sitting there thinking about it. There was the inventor of the smart board, which is used in all these classrooms really throughout North America, I think around the world now. There were several times where she was telling her story. I'm like, man, some people would have just quit. And she didn't. She stuck with it. And those are the kind of things that just really inspire me. Somebody has a good idea, and despite how difficult it is, they stick with it. And then they find that success where they've impacted others in a meaningful way. That was pretty cool. I think Trico Hone's another inductee, Wayne and Eleanor Chu, and immigrated here and started up this business. And they thought, well, the business isn't enough. We're going to make sure we support the community in a meaningful way, and they did that. They saw opportunities to do that. So, those two events, those stick out in my mind because I took my wife to both of those, and we were driving home thinking that is really cool. We need to make sure that when we're older than 70, we're still looking for opportunities to contribute. And no matter how challenging it is, listening to those stories and those inductees to the Business Hall of Fame, stick with it. If you believe in it, stick with it.
I love that. Just stick with it. How about for you personally? What would you say your unique skill is that's made you become so successful?
That's a great question. And I would probably say that it's my ability to build consensus and bring people together and point everybody in the same direction. And I have help doing that, but a lot of that I think comes from listening and understanding everyone's point of view, overcoming objections that some people may have. So, if I were to have a superpower, if we called it that, it would be just the ability to listen and understand people's perspective, but then build consensus amongst the group. That's something that I actually enjoy doing, and it gives me great gratification to be able to do that.
I love that. Joel's superpower is listening. I love
Listening
that.
and consensus building.
Consensus. Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. I guess since you've been listening to a bunch of your team and people around you, what's maybe one question that you never get asked that you wish you would be asked?
That's that's a hard one to answer, I guess. I love it as it pertains to the Stampede when people ask questions and want to know more about the Stampede, because as we talked about earlier, people focus on that 10-day event, and it's hard for me to walk into say a meeting with somebody and just start laying information at them. It needs to be a conversation. It needs to be a flow. So when someone asks, well, what else does the Stampede do? I love it when people ask that. Not everybody asks that. They want to know about the 10-day events, and they want to know about whether it's rodeo or carnival or the stars that are in the Saddle Dome. I love it when people ask, well, what else is the Stampede up to? And I can share some of those stories that I'm sure most people aren't aware of, the impact that this organization has year round.
Absolutely. And I've even learned lots just in this interview. So, and I'm sure the listeners will too. So that's
Yeah.
awesome that you shared. I only have a couple more questions here for you, Joel.
Okay.
What's maybe something that you're proud of that we haven't touched on in the interview so far?
I think with this organization in particular, I'm proud of the way that we accomplish our core mission of presenting Western heritage and preserving it, and also presenting agriculture in a way where people will appreciate agriculture. They'll leave here hopefully with a greater appreciation of agriculture. That's how I came into this business, was through the agricultural side. I grew up showing livestock. And it had just a profound impact on my life and my self-confidence to be able to show livestock and participate in other 4-H activities like public speaking and things of that nature. And so I'm pretty passionate about that. And Western heritage has been a part of my family as well for quite some time. And so being able to preserve that Western heritage and keep it on display for future generations, and communicate the importance of agriculture to largely it's an urban audience that is probably 3 or 4 generations removed from any agrarian background. And one thing that I noticed, whether it's in the United States or in Canada, is that we as North Americans kind of tend to take food for granted, um, because our food production system in both Canada and the United States is so efficient. Uh, we in these two countries spend, the lowest percentage of our disposable income on food of anywhere in the world. And because food is so affordable and so available to most, I won't say all, because I know we have hunger issues and that need to be resolved, but because it's so affordable and so available to all, we tend to take it for granted. But when we look at, there's 7.3 or 7.4 billion people on the planet today. And by 2050, it's going to be 10 billion. I mean, we're going to have to feed more people with less land because we're developing land for other reasons. That's a challenge, and it's a challenge that everyone needs to be aware of, and everyone needs to be supportive of agriculture. So, I'm really proud of the way that this organization communicates that, and a lot of it's targeted at a younger audience with the activity in the city, but I'm sure the parents don't know a lot of those things as well. So people may come here for a variety of reasons. Maybe it's the carnival or the midway or fun food on a stick or whatever it might be. Um, but if they leave here with a greater appreciation for agriculture, that makes me proud, no doubt.
Absolutely. And I'll be sure to support and share the message as well, so that more people are aware, and just go hang out at the Calgary Stampede, go support.
That's
It's a
right.
great time. Where can our listeners connect with you online?
So the Calgary Stampede is pretty much on every social media channel that you might want to get on, and our team is very active in pushing out information, especially as the Stampede approaches. But as I mentioned, throughout the year, because we have a lot of exciting things that happen throughout the year. For me personally, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm not a huge social media user, but I am on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, especially when the Stampede rolls around, and I stay in touch with a lot of friends and colleagues through LinkedIn.
Absolutely. I'll put those links in the show notes, guys. So go reach out. Is there anything you want to plug of the Calgary Stampede, or anything coming up that you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, so the future of the Stampede, just touch on that a little bit. We talked about the BMO Center, and that's really going to be it's going to be a game changer for Calgary, because it will turn Calgary into tier 1 convention destination, and it will create economic impact. I mean, the Calgary Stampede right now, according to a 2019 study, which would have been our last full year prior to the pandemic, creates about $540 million of economic activity per year. About half of that is generated during the 10 days of the Stampede. So it's really meaningful to the community. Even those in the community who don't go to the Calgary Stampede and enjoy it, they benefit from the Calgary Stampede because of that economic impact and economic activity that is generated. And when you add a BMO in and you start bringing in these international conventions, that grows even more. And so we're really proud of that. Another construction project we have going on now is the SAM Center on our youth campus. And I hopefully your listeners will see more about this as it nears completion. BMO Expansion will be done in June of 2024, in time for the 2024 Stampede. We're so excited about that. The SAM Center will be done in April of 2024, and it's a year-round Stampede experience. It's designed to be an immersive and interactive, really education on Western lifestyle, the Calgary Stampede itself, the importance of agriculture. And I get asked what SAM stand for. It actually stands for Samuel. It's not an acronym. The lead donor on it is Don Taylor. And those who've been to the Bella was Don Taylor's mother, so there's the honor to mom. Sam Center, Samuel was his father. There's the honor to dad. And what it does is it's going to give those who come to Calgary, and it's not during the 10 days of the Stampede, they can still get a Stampede experience. And for those local, those who live in Calgary, there will be a rotating display that will switch out every now and then to hopefully maintain their interest, where they'll come back and enjoy the Sam Center again and again. So those are two projects that I'm really excited about. And then on a broader scale, really excited about just the Rivers District Master Plan that Calgary Municipal Land Corporation has put together to turn this area, both Stampede Park and the area north of Stampede Park, into a culture and entertainment district. And very excited about that, because that will be meaningful for Calgary, enhance the quality of life for a lot of Calgarians, and hopefully be a vibrant area that will draw young talent to Calgary to support our burgeoning industries as well.
Absolutely. Sounds like the future is very bright. So I'm looking forward to it. This is awesome. Well, thanks again for being on the podcast. I had a blast speaking with you. I hope for the same for you. I'd like to end the podcast with one last question. So my last question to you is, what does being a leader or leadership mean to you?
Being a leader to me means that you're effective in harnessing the power of all around you, and that could be both human and your capital assets. So surrounding yourself with good people and letting them do their job. I mean, trusting them to do their job. That's important. And then, of course, you have to make good use of your assets as well. So in this case, you'll be talking about Stampede Park and managing it to the maximum. And, leadership to me, it's really about trust. I've worked in a number of industries and witnessed a number of industries and worked for different supervisors and whatnot. If you think about a continuum, on one end of the continuum, on one extreme end, is fear. So you lead and you manage out of fear. You scare people into doing their job. And there are some industries where, it might be necessary. Those jobs that people really don't want to do, but they need a job. It's not sustainable. It's just not sustainable. People get tired of that. And those, that's your proverbial micromanager who's always, looking over your shoulder and making sure you're doing things right. Fear doesn't work. On the very opposite end of this spectrum, to me, is hope. You just kind of hope things work out. That's not a very good strategy either. But right in the middle between that fear and hope is trust, where you trust people to do their job well. They may make some mistakes, but to me, if people aren't making mistakes, they don't have enough latitude in their job and they're not going to grow. But you trust people to treat others right, and you trust people to do their job. And if you establish that balance and that relationship with your employees and those around you, I think it makes you a very effective leader. Hi, I'm Joel Cowley, and you're listening to Joe Momoh Presents.
Thanks again for watching the Joe Momoh Presents podcast. For more episodes, check out joemomoh.com/podcasts. All right, see you next time.